What's up, everyone? It's iCurly here. It is February 27th, and I decided to host a class today within the Opulent Trading Collective Discord community. And I thought it would be a great idea to share this on YouTube as well. Now, this is going to cover my top indicators, ones that I use every single day to help me to navigate the market. I'm going to break them down for you to make it very, very, very seamless. And so, if you like this video, please remember to comment, subscribe, share it with a friend or a family, thumbs it up, and I'll see you in baggage claim. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. All right, so what we're going to do, everyone, is we are actually going to build a chart from scratch together. And I'm going to do a few things just to help you to gain an understanding of these particular indicators. But if you're new to my style of trading, what I like to do is to tell traders to change the colors of things on your chart. And if you change the colors of things on your chart, it helps you to read everything like a book, which is extremely important to me. Because if you're, for example, doing day trades, which move pretty fast, you are going to need to be able to make everything make sense to you in like a glimpse, if that makes sense. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to look at the MACD, okay? It's actually one of my favorite indicators, believe it or not, because once you learn it and you see how simple yet monumentally impactful it is to your trades, you're going to love it, okay? Now, the first thing that we're going to do is you see I pulled the MACD up. Now, if you're using TradingView, the MACD line and the signal line, as you see here, is blue and orange. I don't want that. I need to make it make sense to me. So whatever colors you want to use to make it make sense to you, by all means use that. But I like to change it to red and green, and I'll explain to you why in just a second. So we're always going to go into our settings just to change the colors, right? I'm not going to mess with the histogram because it's pretty cut and dry, and I like those colors on the histogram, and I will explain to you what that means as well. But for the MACD line, we want that bad boy to be green, okay? And then for the signal line, when I hear signal, I think like alert or warning. And so when I hear that word, I want it to be red. I want it to, grab my attention, if you will. And so as you saw, I just changed the thickness just a little bit, and let me do that on the MACD line as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to save this as what it is, right? I already have it saved. So when you do it, you might want to save it as your default. That way you don't have to go in and do this every single time. And then we're just going to hit OK. All right. So now we have it how we want it to be on the chart. And I'm going to move it up because this is, how I like my chart to be built. So with this being the case, everyone, the MACD is a moving average convergence divergence. It consists of two moving averages, right? So you have your MACD line and your signal line, which are essentially moving averages. And it discusses, how they converge and diverge. And it also gives you buy and sell signals as well. Now, the reason why I changed them to green and red is because you'll hear this analogy from me all the time. Whenever the MACD line crosses above the signal line, traders use that as a buy signal, okay? Changing the colors just means to me, whenever green crosses above red, I feel like money is coming out of the fire. Money is no longer being burned. There's money being saved from being completely wiped out. However you want to think of it, that's how I feel when I change it to green and red. And so MACD line is the green one. Signal line is the red one. Whenever the green crosses above red, that is a bullish indication. Okay. So that would mean the opposite. Whenever green crosses below red, whenever the MACD line crosses below the signal line, that is a bearish indication. Now, you also have the words convergence and divergence. So typically when those two lines come together, we tend to look at that as the lead up to an explosive move, which the convergence of them, so the coming together of them, is like the setup for it to do like a large move like this right here, right? So you see how when it kind of converged together in this area, and then it got the bearish crossover, the green cross below red. Look at what happened after that, right? We had this explosive move to the downside, and then you see these two lines, MACD and signal line, diverge. So come apart, pull apart, right? So this is very important because if you think of it like this, it's a simple thing to read. All you're really looking for is the crossovers to be happening. It's important to me as well to identify those crossovers while they're fresh. I don't want a crossover that happened way back here and then I'm way over here trying to get into some puts or something like that. I could have missed the majority of the move, and shortly after it could be crossing to the other direction. And so when I see those crossovers happening, amongst other things, because we're not just using indicators alone. So we don't want to just use the MACD by itself. We want to use something else to give us confluence. But this is a very, very, very great indicator. Now, the other part to the MACD is going to be the histogram. So this is a representation of like overbought, oversold kind of thing, if you will. And obviously, we know that overbought, whenever you hear the word overbought, related to everybody owning the same article of clothing or everyone owning the same pair of shoes. If we all had the same exact thing, it's not going to hold that much value because it's like everybody has it. Like, so what? Everyone has that. And so more people are, more prone to give things away or be able to part ways with things when everyone has it. So think of it like this. If it's overly bought, everyone has it, they might be trying to get rid of it. And if someone is trying to get rid of their position, they're selling it off, right? Now, oversold means it's overly sold. So not everyone has it. So think of it like that, just like that. Not everyone has it. It's a one of one, it's a couture. That's where people want to buy it. So whenever you hear people refer to things as being overbought, oversold, just keep those little analogies in mind. So the other part to that is that you're going to see strength, right? It's going to be one tick per candle. So whenever you see these little ticks, it represents one candle, right? And you see how some of them are shorter, some of them are longer. It's a representation of volume and bigger moves. So if it's smaller, and it's bright red, if you will, then just think of it as, the sellers are in, but there's not a lot of volume selling, right? If it starts to turn pink, or this faint color, then just think like it's losing its volume, it's losing its strength, if you will. Okay. So it's possibly getting ready to change directions once it goes from like this bright color to this more faint color. Just think of it like it's losing a little bit of that strength. It could be preparing to change to the opposite direction. So when you're looking at the MACD, that's a simple, to me. I've had a lot of people explain this particular indicator to me, and I'm the type of person that's just like, okay, well, what does it do? Why does it do it? How do I use it with trading? That's how I use it with trading. The other aspect of that is when you understand candlestick patterns, let's say you have, for example, a shooting star candle, right? Or let's say you have a hammer candle or an inverted hammer candle, like you see an inverted hammer candle happen right here. And then you see shortly after that, we get this crossover. It's almost like the charts are speaking to you. It's saying, hey, I'm getting this bullish reversal candle. Hey, I also have this bullish crossover. That's confluence. It's telling you a story. It's talking to you. It's telling you literally what it's trying to set itself up for. Okay. Is everyone following so far? Give me a five in the chat. All right, great. I was wondering if my screen was sharing and I was a little concerned. I was like, oh, if I was doing all of this yapping and they're not listening or they can't see it, that's crazy. All right, so that's the MACD. I like to keep it at the top of my chart. You don't have to do that. That's a preference, okay? Now the next thing, a lot of you ask me this all the time. When I say we need volume, we need strength. Um, the indicator that I have on the bottom of my chart, obviously, we should all have the volume indicator, right? Volume and price action go hand in hand. So I'm going to say this kind of slowly because I want you to pick up on exactly what it is that I'm saying. If there is low volume and there is a bearish trend, it's going to be a weak bearish trend. So you'll probably see that you're not making a lot of money, even if it's moving down in your favor. If the volume is low, it's going to be a very weak trend in either direction. So if it's bullish, but there's low volume, you're not going to see your contract being impacted that much. So what you want to see is high volume and a trend. It could be bullish or bearish. You want to see high volume and a trend. And that is what's going to impact the value of your contracts when you're trading, or even if you're just, trading shares and not necessarily options, right? So that's very important. So on my chart down here, you see one tick per candle. Whenever you see these little bars, it's always one tick per candle. And over here is the volume indicator, right? So I also go into the settings and I turn on the moving average. So that leads me to my next thing. Okay, let's discuss moving averages. Moving averages in all cases gets its name just from that alone, moving average. So I'm going to put that on my chart as well. Let me look for, here it is, cheat code as well. So I pay for TradingView, but maybe not everyone is in the position to pay for TradingView. There are people who create scripts. So let's say you like to use moving averages and Bollinger Bands, and you like to use a few moving averages. I don't know exactly where they cap you out when it comes to indicators, but they do cap you out on the free version of it. Like you might only get 3 indicators or 4. So if you could find your favorite indicators and look for a script where someone combines, a lot of them together, if not all, cheat code to, not having to pay. Hopefully they don't ban me with this, letting you guys know that. But anyways, so I'm going to put this on my chart. This one, it says 8, 13, 21, and 55, but I don't have that. I went in and I edited it. Say that 3 times fast. I edited it to be the ones that I like to use. Okay. And so as you can see here, these are the ones I like to use. And I kind of mentally mute out the ones that I don't necessarily need if day trading. Now, if we get close to the 200 while we're day trading, obviously I'm going to pay attention to it. But I typically focus on the 9 and 21 unless we're getting really close to the 50 or the 200, then it is important to me. But let's talk about the moving averages. Now, on here again, actually, let me go back to this. On here again, I did the same thing. I did green, red, green, red. I changed the thickness of the lines for the ones that I use to day trade, and the ones that I use for more swing trades are thinner, okay? So that I can know which one is which, because it's extremely important to know what's crossing. So, moving averages. For example, I'm going to just type this out on my chart so people can have an understanding, because I do these in private sessions and people still are kind of confused. And then when I started writing it out, they're like, oh, I get it now. So let's say in a class you have someone who made a 100. Let's say in that same class you had someone that made a 70. And I'm only going to do 3. Let's say you had someone that made a 50. Whenever you're trying to figure out the average for that class, what they're going to do is they're going to add up all those individual numbers. So 100 plus 70 plus 50. And then you have 3 students. So they're going to divide it by 3. So the average for that class is going to be 73.33. So, let me go back in there. It won't let me do it. All right, let's see. Let's see if it lets me just type on here. So 73.33 is the average, right? Now, the reason why I type this out is so that you can understand how moving averages work. If I told you I had a 9 moving average, then it's 9 students with 9 different grades. And then they're going to add it all up and then divide it up to give you the average, right? So it's a 9 moving average. So it's a representation. If you're on we're on the 5-minute chart. So it's a representation of the last 9 5-minute candles. So when a new candle forms on the front end, one falls off the back end, and that number gets recalculated. So the reason why it's called a moving average is for that reason alone, because it's constantly moving with each candle that's opening, and it's recalculating the number. So the 9 moving average, the 21, it's taking the last 9 candles, the last 21 candles, the last 50 candles, the last 200 candles, and it's calculating that average, and it's constantly moving. Okay. So the reason why, and I know a lot of people when they first start trading, they say, well, why is it that my moving averages when I'm on the 5-minute are in a completely different place than when I'm on the daily time frame? You see how it's way up here now versus, way down here? It's because it's taking the last 9 5 minutes versus the last 9 daily candles, which is more data, right? More numbers to kind of calculate, if you will. And that's the reason why. Okay. So now that you know that about moving averages, what I need you to also understand is that they can be on volume bars. It's calculating how the volume moved. You get what I'm saying? Moving averages are also on your MACD, right? It's a moving average convergence divergence. So when you hear moving average, just know that that's basically what it's doing and it's respective to the indicator. So now that we know that, because I do have people who are very, very detailed and just need to know that, I have a few of them on my chart. And I changed the colors of them because I want to be able to see the crossovers no different than the crossovers up here. Whenever the shorter term moving average crosses below the longer term moving average, that is bearish. That's considered a death cross in some cases, depending on the parameter of the indicator, or of the moving average rather. But for me, whenever shorter term crosses below longer term, that's bearish. Whenever shorter term crosses above the longer term, that's bullish. And when I say longer term, I'm literally just talking about the parameter. 9 is shorter than 21. So if the 9 crosses below the 21, it's bearish. 9 is shorter than 21. So if 9 crosses above the 21, that's bullish. Okay. I don't want to move too fast. Is everyone following? I feel like I'm trying my hardest to do, a paint the visuals for you and give you all the analogies in the world so that you don't forget it. Are we good? Please let me know if you're following along. How do you move it to the top of the chart or the bottom? It's going to give you this little arrow right here to move the panel down or the pane. So now that we have that, here's the analogy to help you to remember that you opened a business 21 days ago. You had $100 when you opened. You made in that full day of running that business, 21 days, you had $100. Now, let's fast forward to the future. You have $50 in the present day. You had 100 when you opened. You have 50 in the present day. You're doing worse than when you first opened. So if 9 is the most recent, right? Then 21 days ago. And if you have less, if the 9 crosses below the 21, you're doing worse than you were 21 days ago. If 9 crosses above, you're doing better than you were 21 days ago. So keep that mentality when it comes to understanding your moving averages. That's basically the story that it's telling you. Are you doing better or worse? You get what I'm saying? And think of this, if the 9 crosses below the 200, you mean to tell me in the most recent 9 candles, you're doing worse than the accumulation of 200? That's not good. Okay. That's not good at all. Something happened, right? And so again, like I said, whenever the shorter term crosses below the longer term, that's bearish. Whenever the shorter term crosses above the longer term, that's bullish. Okay. And that's basically how I read that. So now let's run through something together. Let's make some things make sense. Bearish crossover on the MACD. Sideways consolidation, rejection of a 200. We couldn't break this very harsh moving average. Moving averages also serve as a form of support and resistance. So we're constantly resisting at this moving average. It's 200 candles worth of data, right? So, wow, why is that happening? We got this crossover here. We're rejecting here. And then look, we get this bearish crossover. Look at what happens. We just die. Okay. Do you see what happens when we got this bullish crossover? Right? You see how price action is actually claiming above this, and then it eventually gets this bullish crossover, and then it pops up way up here. Bullish momentum, bullish move to the upside. Okay, then we get that crossover again. We get this crossover again, and you see how we fall. So when I say that you want to always have indicators that complement each other, one, you don't want to use one indicator alone because you don't want to get the jump and say, oh, we got this crossover right here. Oh, it's getting ready to die. And then there's this accumulation that happens first. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that there are a few things that are lining up that can give you a higher probability trade and confluence for your trade as well. So that's what I'll say. Now, the market is open, obviously. So I have my moving average. We're going to move to the downside of this chart, the bottom of this chart. So you see how, and one second, you all, let me make sure I'm in do not disturb, because if my phone rings, that's kind of unprofessional, right? So as you look at the bottom of my chart, a lot of times you might hear me in the Discord and I'll say, wow, the volume is really low. Sometimes I come over here and I just look at the key stats and I look at the average volume versus where we currently are. And that can kind of give me a gauge if the volume is, close to, our average or way below our average. If there is like a holiday that we're coming off of, typically it's low volume, or right before the holiday, it's typically low volume. And remember what I said about volume and price action. We need volume in order for the contracts to move. If there's no low volume, it's not going to be liquid. You're probably going to see a very wide spread on the contracts. We don't want that. We don't want to fool around with that. It's just going to be, like watching paint dry. So at the bottom of my chart, you see the moving average. So if it's way below that line, then it's kind of telling you like we're lower than our average, right? Which could be indicative of something like this, like sideways trading. If it's at that line or relatively close, that's decent enough. But if it's like way above it, then you're going to get an explosive move, kind of like this, to one direction or the other. That's what you want to see. You also want to see consistency in the colors, right? You don't want to see red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green. You'll hear me in the community say that's Christmas light show. I don't want a Christmas light show because that means bears and bulls, calls and puts are being chopped around. I don't want to be a part of that. I want consistency in colors, okay? So that's extremely important to me too. You don't want any kind of imbalances when it comes to the volume. So just pay attention to that as well. So we have literally covered MACD in a simplified form, moving averages in a simplified form, and the volume. I will say one other thing too, in reference to moving averages, which back over here. I use the simple moving averages even to day trade. And I know exponential is more so what you want to use when you're day trading. The reason why is because exponential moving averages put a heavier weighting on the most recent candle, which is, put it like this, they're trying to say it's the most accurate reading, if you will. Um, I feel like simple moving averages are stronger. So that's the reason why, because they're more so designated for longer term trends or longer term trades. So I'm like, well, just give me that. I'm cool with that. So simple moving averages are more so for if you are wanting to swing trade. Exponential moving averages are for faster moving trades. So if you're wanting to day trade, okay? So just letting you know, you're going to see EMAs or SMAs, exponential moving averages versus simple moving averages. Now, the last one that we're going to talk about, because we're going to keep this one very simple. The last one that we want to talk about, and we'll talk about other indicators. As you can see, I have favorited a lot of these, right? Is the RSI. So just like everything else, you see the default colors on TradingView. Just like everything else, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change the colors, right? So I don't need the RSI moving average on personally. I just don't care to have it on there. I'll typically turn that white. I'll turn the upper bands. If I'm teaching, I don't do this for my day-to-day trading. I do this just to teach people, okay? And then the lower band, I'll turn that green. Just because when you get close to red, what does that mean? It's getting towards the zone where it's overbought. If it's green, you're getting towards an area where it's oversold. So once it's up here, you're considering getting puts. Once it's down here, you're considering getting calls. And I'm saying considering because there are going to be some variations to this that I like to teach too. Now, the textbook tells us 70 is the overbought area, typically the sell-off point. Textbook also tells us the 30 area is the oversold area, typically the area that you buy. For years, I've been saying this. Squeeze in your chart, get a little intimate with every ticker, right? And see what they're capable of doing. You can put a support and resistance on the RSI. So for example, you see how I put that at 79.50? You see how we got that high this particular time? We did it again over here. We got close to that. We got it over here close to that. over here. So the reason why I do that is because sometimes we get to 70 and we're like, oh man, the RSI is hot. It's getting ready to drop. And it's like, well, yeah, but historically it's done higher than that. So I don't want you to jump into puts just because you think that's the place where it's supposed to dump. And it can go higher than that. And then 30 is the place where it's supposed to, you're supposed to buy it, right? But look at it historically. Historically, it has gone way down here. So don't think that just because it's at 30, it's the time to buy because it can do a little bit lower. I could have even grabbed this little point down here, but this thing keeps moving in my way. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can. And so now what do we do with that? Well, we work from the top of our chart to the bottom. Look how these things line up, right? Look how this crossover lined up, right? With candlestick, right? For those of you who know, candlesticks are the foundation to every trade that I get in. Although this is not a candlestick video, I'm looking at this candle. So I'm looking at this crossover. I'm looking at this candle. I'm also looking at the curvature to this MACD, which is another kind of put it like this, when you're trading, always think about what you can create, negate, or do. So when I start to see a curve, what does a curve do? A curve leads to a potential crossover. So that has my attention. And this is happening with this candle, which is also near a rejection point of this moving average, which is also a curvature, which could lead to the downside, which is also at a rejection point, which is also pouring in some seller volume. It's kind of telling me this story really quickly. And that's what I need to know. I need to be able to read this book in a glimpse. Okay. So these are my favorite indicators. Indicators that are letting you know overbought and oversold, oscillating indicators, volume, and directional type of indicators. To me, that's the perfect foundation for your chart. It doesn't even have to be the MACD. Look for something that tells a similar story to the MACD or something that tells a similar story to the RSI. Some people use the stochastics, which is the cousin to me of the RSI. So you just need something that's going to give you volume, direction, overbought, oversold. And you need to know candlesticks. And to me, that's, like I said, the perfect makings of building a chart. Okay. All right, you guys. So that is all for this particular video. Please remember, if you like it, share it with a friend or family member, comment, subscribe. I hope to see you in baggage claim. Have an amazing day.